think pretty much everybody know what we're here for, and the bottom line is, it's like we tell people this stuff will never end as long as, until other people got power, until we grab power. Again, if you haven't heard, there's 2 proposals for charter schools for the Austin community. One, a K through 8 charter school being proposed by Chicago Education Partnership, and then a high school being proposed by Noble Street. And it's interesting considering that, we've had 4 neighborhood schools closed last year alone because the board said they have no money. But all of a sudden, they said that, we're going to entertain a proposal for additional charter schools, which is Wendy Catton eloquently wrote in Crane's Business in an op-ed piece. This is not choice, it's called chaos. So this is totally crazy. So the whole issue has come down to teacher tissue. Now, who's familiar with school-based budgeting and who's not familiar with school-based budgeting? Now, they've basically said per student is how much we're going to, budget for each school. So now, if you lose so many students, you lose money. If you gain so many students, you gain money. This is something that Catalyst, Sarah Carper with Catalyst Magazine did a great job. She's been out talking about this, but this is from her research that we talked about the old system that schools were allocated teachers based on the number of students, small enrollment swings didn't change the bottom line. The salary didn't matter to principals in terms of the salaries. If you wanted to hire an experienced teacher, it didn't matter. You want to hire a new teacher, it didn't matter. You want to hire a teacher with a PhD, it didn't matter. If you want to hire a teacher with no experience, it didn't matter. It came out of central office budget. But now you have what they call the student-based budgeting, whereas you have core allocation money that follows the student, getting back to the fact that the dollar literally follows the kids. This core allocation here for this example is for students in the 4th through 8th grade. Let's say if Ella Flagg Young School were to lose 20 students, so let's say they're enrolled into a charter school, right? Based on the new funding system, Ella Flagg Young will lose $82,800. Now, one of the things that, also from Catalyst, what they showed is that, we've been dealing with 56 of 151 school actions, 43 school closings, 13 turnarounds. Pretty much, as you can see on the pie in the green, which hopefully you can make out, it's like 46% of the schools went to private operators. Basically, our schools been privatized, whether it's been turned over to AUSL or charter schools. We got 25% of our buildings sitting up there vacant, like at Emmett School that we were out there that Wednesday. We have 19%, which was converted over to district. Mrs. Trust, the memory of Weston House is one of them that we dealt with. So that's what's going on and been going on with this whole thing with school closings. Now, one of the things I kind of wish, that we had black elected officials here, is it me or does it bother anybody that the Austin community's never had a magnet school? Does it bother anybody? Anybody get a little bent out of shape about that? Fortunately, our elected officials don't seem to be. So one of the things that when we were going through this, we actually was, we thought we were getting close to getting a magnet school here in Austin community because we were meeting with CPS. And here, this is what they gave us in terms of the numbers about let's say what it would cost to start up an IB magnet school in any community. As you can see, in terms of the elementary at the top, basically about $500,000 it would cost to start up a magnet school in any community, right? And then if you look at the bottom, ongoing costs, $134,000. Yeah, ongoing costs is $134,000 to $254,000 per school, depending on the size of the school. So money's going someplace, and those resources, when people talk about bringing resources to our community, it's not coming to our community in a sense, and unfortunately we don't have people fighting and advocating for those resources. Now, this is like I call a 700-pound gorilla in the room that, sometimes, we don't like to talk about, be uncomfortable, but it's just the truth. It's the issue of, a race. It becomes down to next steps in terms of what we're willing to do. Now, we're not going to get to the next steps. We're going to talk about next steps later on because we're going to get through some presentations, some other information. But there are some things and then this is just me in terms of the way I see things, about holding black elected officials accountable. Because, after what happened to our community, our neighborhood, honestly, we got to look at it for what it's worth. It was black teachers, black principals, black support staff who lost their jobs.
So there are 10 charters opening for sure, no matter what. There might be 21 more coming. So that could be 31 more charter schools over the next 2 years when the district faces what they claim to be is, and I don't know what the real deficit is, but they say they have about the same deficit that they said they had last year when they needed to close 50 neighborhood schools. So it's ridiculous. If some of those charter schools get rejected on the 22nd, which I think some of them might, we think, then it can go to this commission. There's a state charter commission that was set up 2 years ago, basically to override local school board decisions. So even a school board like CPS that generally approves any charter, well, they rejected one last year called Concept. You guys probably have heard about it. There's all this stuff going on with this just really bizarre financing stuff, conflict of interest, weird stuff with Mike Madigan traveling to Turkey, where the concept, it's so bizarre, it's hard to go into, but the concept is run or connected with, should I even go into it here? It's the largest charter operator in the country, and it's in the head of it is some recluse from, I don't want to put down from Turkey, who is like, how do I describe it? It sounds so crazy. Turkey's on the brink of a civil war, basically, and one of the persons vying for power is some guy hiding out in the Poconos. I mean, it sounds like some crazy story. I don't even know how to do it.
This is the group that likes to hear it raw.
Okay, so this is all so bizarre. It sounds nuts. So anyway, but the bottom line is there's all this money circulating, there's all these funky financing things going on with having to get more students to pay back their bonds, and what the bigger picture is with all that politically, I have no idea. You know, I have no idea why how our government's involved. It's all very strange, but the bottom line is that there's no accountability right now for charter schools. They don't have to disclose their budgets. They don't have to tell you where they're spending, and so our district schools have to show you where, and that doesn't mean there aren't sometimes issues with budgets, I'm not saying that, but charters don't even have to put it out there where they're spending their money, and that's a big issue. So, okay, so there's a bill in Springfield that a rep, Linda Chapalavia, just said she's putting out because she was getting pressure from some residents in Aurora because last year this group, I guess I'm being taped, I should be careful. This group is trying to open a virtual charter network in the suburbs with 18 virtual schools, so your kids don't have to go to school with a teacher anymore. Now they can just be taught by the computer or whatever. So there is a bill, and this is good news. I don't know what will happen to it, but one of the things we'll be talking about at this forum and getting people to try to get involved in and call their reps on is there's a bill to end this charter commission. So yeah, it's surprising, and Kim Lightford, Senator Lightford also is sponsoring it. They need way more support to get the word out for it to go anywhere. And sadly, since Mike Madigan's been going to Turkey, whether he ever calls this out of the thing for a vote, I don't know. But this needs way more attention because there's so much shady stuff happening.
I think you guys know about Noble Street. Y'all don't know about Noble Street and the money? I'm gonna let Valerie know about the money, right? Valerie's gonna talk to y'all about the money. That's a good segue, isn't it?
Well, not about Noble Street money.
Yeah, but basically what happens in Noble Street, this is what they want to bring to our community, Noble Street. If your shoe's untied, that's $5. If your shirt is out of your pocket, that's $5. Not button up to the next $5. Then if you get so many demerits, you have to take what they call an altitude adjustment class that you got to pay for in the summer, and if you don't pay for it, you don't move to the next grade. This is what our folks in our community talking about bringing to our, talking about they're contributing to the prison, to the school to the prison pipeline, because you basically criminalize our kids in a sense by kicking them out and giving them no support, like they just garbage and discarding them into the streets. This is what our elected officials are supporting, and our faith-based, those who show compassion to our children and community. This is the stuff, this is why I had my panic attack, Mrs. Truss. People like this that say they love our kids, and at the same time, they'll go ahead and say, okay, it's okay for you to come to our community and do our children dirty. While we got schools like Steinmetz, Foreman, Austin, Douglas, that's going to take our kids where they are and do the best with them. So this is why I say we got to push this stuff back and call our leaders, well, I don't call them our leaders, but individuals who purport to be leaders in our community out. So, and honestly, when we keep voting these people back in.
Good evening. Okay. Hi, I'm Valerie Leonard, and I was not prepared to speak tonight, so just bear with me. Took a little page from Abraham Lincoln. He wrote his Gettysburg Address on the back of an envelope. I figure my envelope can work for these notes. But at any rate, I want to talk to you about two things, the Gates Charter Compact as well as the race to the top. Maybe we should start with the race to the top, since that really kind of fuels a whole lot of this stuff. How many people have heard of race to the top? Okay, so most people are at least familiar with it. So when we look at all these school closings going on around the country, we tend to look at the local government, and we focus on our state government and we blame them. But a lot of these policies really started at the top, at the federal level, in 2009. So we have to know that really President Obama, before he got elected, a lot of these deals were done. They, you know, if he could make funding decisions in 2009, a lot of this stuff was in the work, you know, during the presidential campaign. One of the things that Race to the Top does is it encourages this massive school closings that we see from city to city to city. It also encourages a lot of this testing that's going on. It also encourages tying teacher performance to student test performance, and these tests, you know, a lot of times, you know, teachers don't have control, you know, as to what goes on in the home. They have to deal with who, you know, the hand that they're dealt once the kids get there. So there's a lot of these controversial policies that really have their start at Race to the Top. And one of the things that I think is really unfortunate is the fact that the state governments, as a condition of even participating or getting a good score, they had to agree to all of these things, including agreeing to funding charter schools at the same level as the public schools, whether or not they got any funding. So they basically had to go to their state legislators around the country and say, okay, we agree to fund the charters at the same level as public schools. We agree to do all of this testing and, you know, the Common Core and all of this stuff. So the federal government has basically dangled carrots around the country with no guarantee of funding for a lot of this so-called reform. So when we drill down to the local level, what's happening here in the city of Chicago, as well as major cities around the country, we have entered into the Gates District Charter Compact. And what that says is, in exchange, you know, for the ability to compete, there's no guarantee that you'll get this funding, but in order to compete, you have to sign a district charter compact. But you also, typically, what you'll see is the districts have to agree to close, quote unquote, the bottom performing 25% of schools. And they also have to prioritize giving those school buildings to not public schools, but charter schools. And then they also have to agree to fund the schools, you know, all at the same level. And the impact here has been tremendous. You know, so in exchange for that, like I said, there's no guarantee that they'll get this funding. They get to compete for up to $6 million for professional development funds, as well as general operating funds for charter schools. They also get to compete for up to $25 million, up to $20 million of construction funds. And all of this money is going to go to charter schools. None of it goes to the regular charter schools. Now, guess what? City of Chicago has agreed to do all of that and more, including more testing, even assessments to the preschool level. So they have agreed to all of this, but we only got to date, after 3 years of participating in this, $100,000. So we closed 50 schools. We borrowed $363 million to pay for closing those schools. We destabilize neighborhoods all around the city and have a ripple effect, so we're not just destabilizing schools, but entire communities. All of that, and we got $100,000, enough for 2 teachers, their pension, and health care. Who's minding the store? We got people like Andrea Zopp, who's on the board of Urban Partnership Bank. We got David Vitale, who's chairman of that board, and that bank is on the brink of closing. Yet they're charged with running Chicago public schools. On one hand, they're closing schools in certain neighborhoods like Austin, like Lawndale, but yet their banking practices, they're focusing on similar communities, even some of the same communities that they're closing schools. So who's minding the store, and what is the real agenda? And let me get off my soapbox. All right, thank you.
Thank you.